Not hopefully. People tell me every day love is gonna come my way. Searching for clues that I hope to find. One thing that's gonna last. I wanna live and forget the past. I know this change is gonna do me good. I know this change is gonna do me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change is do me good. You gotta prove and let me know. Don't hold back now. Give me a ride. Give me something to get through. You know you should. I know this change is gonna do me good. I know this change is gonna do me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change will do me good. Everything changes in its own way. I'm feeling better every day. And I wanna look back and all of this okay. And I wanna even though I love you I know this change will feel me good. Even though it hurts me now, I know this change will feel me good.
Aloha. Good evening. This is Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona, for Spiritual Image Productions on Blog Talk Radio and FreeConferencing.com, and now Ustream, establishing and maintaining right relationships with human values. Aloha, and welcome to tonight's Golden Age Music Show. Tonight we're talking with Ananda Rasa, and his and we're going to be playing his album called ARK Mulani Kirtan. Is that correct? Is that how you say that, Ananda?
Kirtan, yes. Mulani Dub Kirtan.
Okay, now what?
And then the ARK stands for Ananda Rasa Kirtan.
Oh, I was wondering. I was thinking that was an acronym for something, but I didn't know what. But okay, so anyway, the Golden Age Music Show is dedicated to featuring spiritual inspirational music with the focus of sending love, light, blessings, healings, and angels of light and love to your family, friends, etc., in the form of song requests. And tonight we're going to be playing Ananda Rasa's music, and just let you know that the album is rooted in reggae, raga, dub, kirtan, and features guests. Features Maya Puris. Is that how you say that?
Maya Puris.
Maya Puris. Prajna Vieta.
Correct.
Okay, and Tahir Faridi Karwal, and it's mixed by Michael Goldwasser, and it's dubbed Side of the Moon. Okay, so just to let you know, Ananda Rasa, the Bliss of Divine Rapture, the Nectar of Bliss, Kirtan, is led by vocalist and multi-instrumentalist David Estes, who is currently based in the San Francisco Bay Area. David grew up in India has studied music since childhood and spent several years completely immersed in the practices of Kirtan, Swadhyaya, Sanskrit chants sung to original melody compositions in light classical Indian ragas or rajas. Additional musical influences include Qawwali and reggae. The power, energy, and the vibration of the kirtan is experienced through chanting in call and response with the audience. For more on Ananda Rasa and ARK Mulani Kirtan, go to www.anandarasa, and that's rasa.com. And then you can, now, can they order your album from there, Ananda?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the album can be ordered through the website. There's a link for YouTube. To iTunes.
Okay.
As well as for hard copy CD can be ordered directly via email via the website. PayPal.
Perfect.
There's actually a PayPal button.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, and we're going to talk to Ananda Rasa here in a few minutes. But first of all, I want to introduce all of our underwriters who help make this show happen from week to week, month to month, year to year, beginning with Maha Dikini Lorraine at www.mahadikini.com. Maha Dikini Lorraine's life has been a personal journey exploring sexuality and spirituality for over 20 years. She's a certified tantric counselor and tantric teacher and a certified mind sound teacher. Maha Dikini Lorraine is also a graduate of Margot Non's Real Sky Dancing Facilitator Training Program and a current member of the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists Club, as well as a charter member of the Association of Sexual Energy Professionals. She regularly attends trainings and conferences to keep current with the latest research and information on sexual education. And we also have the 90-Day Ascension Journey at www.90dayascensionjourney.com. When you sign up for the 90-Day Ascension Journey, you will be facilitated with defining and redefining your soul through life purpose. You will be assisted with finding out what Ascension means to you. On this journey, you will be provided with tools and techniques and assistance to empower you to connect and reconnect with yourself and your emotions, feelings, and your mind, body, and spirit. Through a universal soul-centered process, you will be going through a lifelong transformation that will allow you to move forward with your endeavors and never look back if you dare. And just to let you guys know, I've done a number of journeys with people with this program, and recently, a few months ago, I wrote the book to supplement this. So you can literally go on Amazon and order it through there, or Kindle, and check it out and see what you think. Or you can go to my website, spiritualnessproductions.com. You can go to spiritualnessproductions.com. First of all, on the right-hand side, there's a place to sign up for the email list, and then if you scroll towards the middle, and there's a picture of the book. Click on that. That'll take you to a page where you can check out an excerpt from there. I think the introduction and the first chapter, and then if you want to order it from there, you can order it from there as well. So yeah, we also have MUFON Symposium 2016 at www.mufonsymposium.com. The 2016 Symposium, UFOs from Oceans to Outer Space, is the 47th annual International UFO Symposium sponsored by MUFON. This year's event features outstanding UFO researchers and what are those guys called? Investigators. Yeah, now I remember. So anyhow, investigators and from around the world sharing their insights on UFOs, where they're from and what they are and what this means for mankind. Join Ananda Rasa, myself, and I, and other scientifically minded people for a great event in Orlando, Florida, from the 25th to the 28th of August of this year. And just to let you guys know, I believe starting next week, I'm going to be interviewing 3 of these speakers from the symposium here, and you can check them out for yourself, see what you think. There's a number of speakers that are going to be at this thing, and so you can go to the website, and if you really like what's going on, of course you can get your tickets there. And if you happen to be at the symposium and you happen to see me there, give me a big aloha, give me a high five, and at least let me know that you're there, and give me some greetings from from whatever planet you're from, and that's okay for me. So again, we're back here with Ananda Rasa. Now, okay, first of all, you said you were living somewhere, and then you moved. Is that correct, Ananda?
Yeah, I should probably clarify from the get-go. Actually, Ananda Rasa is the name of it's sort of it's the name for the Kirtan band. It's not actually my name.
I thought that was like
direct alias. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the time that's misleading. The idea for the Ananda Rasa name for the band / Kirtan project started originally when I was recording my first CD back in 2008 and 2009. It was started as a side project as an offshoot from my own chanting practice. At the time, I was a keyboard player in a reggae band, and I had also various other musical projects happening. And that was one of those in the mix of what I was working on. And I wanted to really choose a name that described the experience, the energetic and devotional connection I had experienced through chanting Kirtan music, as opposed to, and also to keep that as sort of, that was my Kirtan project branding, and then it turned out that became my main thing, and it started that way. So, yeah, technically that's not my name, but that's...
No, well, a lot of people take on spiritual names and, Indian names, and I thought that was your spiritual name, in East Indian name or something like that. So I didn't understand that. So.
Oh, it's totally fine. I get that a lot. So I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. But yeah. Anyway, back to the question, as far as where I've been living the last 11 years in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was in Mountain View, where I had relocated to when I had moved out of New York City in 2005. And then, as of this past December, I moved up into the countryside of Sonoma County, further north, west of Sebastopol, in between Sebastopol and Bodega.
Yeah, that's a really nice area too, huh? Isn't it?
Oh yeah, this is a beautiful place to live. It took a bit of an adjustment because going from a bit of a more busy environment, but I think I'm progressively moving away from New York City to Mountain View was a huge change, and then this is another big change, and I'm totally
Got it. So, David, why don't you just kind of give us a bio about who David is, where you born at, where you raised at, and how you got into music, and then and just kind of catch us up to date where you're at now.
Yeah, sure. I was actually, I'm originally from the East Coast. I was born in New Hampshire. My parents are both from upstate New York. And at the age of 4, my dad got a job in India, and the whole family moved to India. This was in the mid-70s.
Now, what did you get a job doing?
My dad moved there to set up a computer center for an agriculture research center.
Oh,
it's interesting because at that time in the 70s, a lot of people were going to India in search of spiritual gurus and teachings and life transformations. And my folks were basically, 2 younger adults with 2 kids and went for a job. So we were living in a community in Hyderabad, India, which is south central India, the 5th largest city. At least it was when we were there.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be for a 2-year assignment, and my parents ended up staying in India for 20 years.
Wow.
So I basically grew up. I grew up in India from the age of 14 to 18.
Okay.
Interestingly, in the context of what we're talking about with Kirtan, even though there were times throughout my growing up there many times, of course, that I was exposed to Indian music, Kirtan music, devotional music. I was very exposed, of course, to uh, Hindu culture as well as many other cultures and different religions in India, but I didn't have much of a spiritual connection on a deep level with chanting, even though I was always somewhat fascinated with it. I was actually, I studied music since I was very young, mostly Western music, and I did attend a international Western, actually an American system international boarding school in Tamil Nadu, a place called Kodaikanal, which is in South India in the mountains, that was founded in 1901. But my time there was focused on Western music. I was a big fan of Bob Marley and reggae since since I think the age of 11 or 12 when I first heard a tape in the early 80s, shortly after he had died. And so actually, reggae at that age became my favorite music, and we even had a band playing. There was actually a lot of people into Bob Marley in that school, and not only in the town where that school was, where I had friends that were older than me. There was a sort of like a little reggae culture scene, especially focused around the music of Bob Marley. And yeah, that's what I went to school there, finished high school, graduated, moved back to the U.S. to go to college.
Now, what did your mom do all this time while you were there?
My mother's a teacher. She teaches French and Spanish.
Oh, got it.
French and English.
Interesting.
And so she also, for a while, taught at the school that both my sister and I attended in South India. And then my folks in '94 wrapped up the job there and moved back to the U.S., actually to Mountain View, where I was living. I ended up thinking I should move to upstate New York because that's where all the familial connections were. But having gone to a international boarding school with kids from 40 countries around the world, I felt like a real fish out of water all of a sudden in a remote area of upstate New York, where also I wasn't used to the extreme weather, cold and hot. Well, the hot I could handle, but the cold was brutal.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
So I basically, I stuck that out for 3 years and then decided to move to New York City. Even though I wasn't a big fan of New York City, the woman I was dating at that time was from there, and so I moved there with her. And I ended up staying in New York for the next 13 years, and actually connected with in New York I found many things. I did a lot of crazy things in New York, and every year was an amazing evolving of on many levels. I moved there when I was 21, and around the age of 26, it was that I had a powerful spiritual connection, actually a spiritual awakening, and completely reconnected to a spiritual connection to India that I had never had when I lived there. And then I progressively over the next couple of years after that, that's when I connected to chanting and meditation on a very deep level, and my life started transforming rapidly in a very powerful way. And
let me ask you this, David, real quick. So the whole time you're in India, you don't have any major spiritual experiences or any paranormal experiences. I don't know, UFOs or aliens, or even with gurus or anything. Did you have a connection with a guru there or not?
I didn't at that age. No, I actually, interestingly, in my teen years, I had a lot of spontaneous spiritual experiences that I didn't quite know what they were, and it was when somebody gave me a book on Zen Buddhism, and I started reading that and was like, oh, I can relate to this. This is what I've been kind of feeling and thinking about. I did have a friend who used to come to our little reggae jam parties who was older than me, who used to bring his drum, and he would chant and sing different kirtan, and he was the only one who would sing kirtan while in between the reggae songs, and I was always fascinated with him, and I could feel something, but it wasn't on a deep level. So I felt like I was touching into something when I was growing up there, but it wasn't until I had to be in New York, this moment in New York City where it's kind of like everything came full circle times 1,000. And
so what kind of experiences were you having that you're saying that, and even though you're saying they weren't major experiences, what are you talking about? What do you mean? We're trying to understand what you're talking about.
Well, interestingly, the first time I ever sat to meditate when I was 16, I was kind of going through a identity crisis, and I was home on vacation from school for Christmas, and a friend of mine had given me a book which was a self-help book about building self-confidence, and I had never read a book like that, and you know, a lot of those kind of books, people like kind of roll their eyes and seriously. But it actually, when I read that book, I couldn't put it down because it had so many amazing ideas and things in it that I never even thought about, and it was just blowing my mind, and I could feel something shifting. And in that book, the guy, his name was Dr. Robert Anthony, he talked about meditation, and I had heard about meditation. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And he described the benefits and how he had, benefited from it, and many people have. And he actually gave meditation instructions. And so it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting in my room on my bed, and he said in this book, when you're ready, just say to yourself, let go. And I did that, and there was this little, not little, there was like this catapulting explosion within myself where I...
Was it a visual thing, or was it a feeling? Was it an energetic feeling thing, or both?
It was more of a feeling, but at the same time, I felt like I was suddenly in the middle of the universe, and at the same time, it was very intoxicating. I felt totally stoned, actually.
Right?
I haven't smoked anything or anything, but I felt in a very intoxicated state. But at the same time, simultaneously, I felt completely connected to everything. And visually, I felt like I was in the middle of this universal outer space place, but at the same time, exactly where I was sitting. And that was really an aha moment, my first, because from then on, the next, and then I sat there for like an hour, which was, I never was able to sit still for an hour, but it was spontaneous. I was in this sort of state.
Were you kind of blissing out? Is that what you're saying, or a state of nirvana? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I didn't even have to think about it. I was just right there,
exactly.
Sitting in this blissful awareness, and eventually I lay down, and then I woke up the next morning, and I noticed that things looked kind of lighter, and I felt lighter, and I thought, wow, that was amazing. And honestly, my feeling was like, oh, that must be what happens to people when they meditate. But then I realized later how something definitely woke up in that moment. And then, interestingly, when that connection in New York City many years later, it was about 10 years after that. That's when it was the same kind of experience, but magnified maybe by 1,000.
Oh.
Incredible vision of a light floating out of me and exploding, and I knew in that moment, I'm like, okay, this has come full circle. This is what I've been looking for, and then part of that whole center where I was going, they did a lot of kirtan chanting, and at that time I was thinking, wow, I don't quite get this chanting thing, and what's the big deal? But then as I would sit there chanting, this wave of bliss would just come over me, and I was like, wow, okay, well that's why they're chanting. And it was inspiring because it was the same kind of energy through meditation, but through a musical medium.
Exactly.
Being a musician, that was very inspiring, because the thing that, I mean, I always loved Zen, and I've read so many books, and I love the Japanese simplicity of it, but the only thing I was always thinking is like, there's no music, there's no, music wasn't a part of that program in the sense of, I mean, there are musical elements, but there wasn't song and that's the beauty.
That's the way that you play. Now let me.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't get enough of this call and response chanting thing. I thought, wow, this is amazing.
I hear you.
The back and forth thing, it's like the ebb and flow of the tide of this energetic thing that everybody's swimming in and just singing.
Because it all of a sudden becomes a dance, and you're not moving at all. You're just your inner spirit's dancing, and you're just going with it.
Yeah, and you don't know who's calling and responding anymore. This beautiful, yeah, it's a dance, really.
Now let me ask you this: during your development process and all that, did you ever hear the triangle at all ring? Did you ever read about that or know about that?
About the witch?
Well, at some point, one day I was in my apartment meditating up in Texas while I was going to school at I think it was TCU and University of Texas Arlington. And so one day I was getting ready to meditate, somewhere in that process, and all of a sudden I hear like in my mind, right? I go, what was that? That was kind of weird. And then later on, about 5 years later, literally, I read a book. I had a girlfriend. She had a book by with I think it was Ram Dass or something like that, or not Ram Dass, but Maharaji. And and in the book it said when the student's ready and if you go on the path, they'll hear a triangle bell ring. So I thought, well, that's interesting. That's what I was hearing. So back in Texas. So, and I didn't think anything.
Yeah, I didn't experience. It's interesting you say that, though. I never had that like a sound per se like that. But I actually do know somebody who had sitting in the lobby of a building had a very similar experience where she suddenly heard this very high pitched ringing sound.
Yeah.
And then completely had this thing come over her, and she just burst into tears, and she asked the person at the desk, like, what was that noise? And they were like,
yeah, nobody heard it, right?
that high pitched ringing sound, and she thought it was like maybe a fire alarm, kind of short circuiting or something, but the person was like, I didn't hear anything. So,
yeah, and it went on like, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds top, but
yeah, that's what happened to her. That's interesting. I've only heard that a couple times, but I personally myself didn't experience that, but I definitely I had some powerful I did have some powerful
experiences,
waves of energy that went through my body that felt like earthquake magnitude.
Oh yeah, oh wow. So you're back in New York. You're back in New York. You're living with your girlfriend. You're going to school, I believe. And then all of a sudden you experience this thing, this energetic experience or whatever in New York. So go ahead from wherever you left off.
Well, so actually at that time I wasn't with the girlfriend I had long broken up, and I was working as a bartender, and definitely living a pretty, that was the height of a very indulgent, somewhat reckless lifestyle. Fun at the time, but incredibly after that experience, even though I didn't consciously think, I felt kind of a little bit superhuman after that, thinking, well, I can just do whatever I want because it's all going to be great. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant, but slowly, one by one, all these kind of crazy things that I was doing that, one, weren't very healthy for my mind or my body, just started falling to the wayside. And then all of a sudden I found myself in a place of like I don't want to hang out anymore, and as a result of that, I didn't really have a lot of the people that I hung out with. We kind of lost common interest because it was based around social life in those circles. So I just decided, well, since I'm free on the weekends, why don't I, when I get done with my bar shift every Friday, I work at lunch shifts on Fridays. When I get done at 5, why don't I just go straight to the bus station, take a bus upstate. There was an ashram in 2 hours north of New York City, and I would just go there and spend the whole weekend there. And they would have chanting programs and meditation, and you could do seva. I would do seva, helping clean the place and chop vegetables, and that went on for a couple of years. And then through that, I started organizing to go back to India, and I wanted to live full time in an ashram in India.
Wow.
As a full-time resident, to completely immerse myself in these practices. It's something, before finding the India reconnection, I had always thought of, like, I want to either go to Japan or go somewhere and live in a monastery in a very focused spiritual environment. And so it ended up being this, and this is what I really wanted. So I went to India, and over the course of 2 visits, stayed full-time in an ashram outside of Mumbai, full-time staff helping run retreats in the audio department, and then also the music department, and doing a regular practice of singing Kirtan and Swadhyaya chanting, which is Sanskrit text chanting, learning more about pronouncing Sanskrit, and also I focused on a lot of meditation at that time on a regular basis. And interestingly, at that time, meditation was my main practice. As chanting, as that cultivated, then even though I did chant regularly, later it morphed into where singing Kirtan actually became my favorite practice.
And at that time, you were playing instruments, a number of instruments. You've already figured out how to play several instruments. Is that what I hear you saying as well?
Yeah, I did already play several Western instruments like guitar and a little bit of piano and some percussion, and I've always been a singer most of my life. And then it was through the ashram that I learned about harmonium and playing harmonium, and also more about drumming. Before I go into the ashram in India, I was kind of faking it on the drum, the 2-headed drum that they use in chanting, the mridanga, which was easy to do in the West. But then when I got back there, and there's so many young Indian boys in the ashram that's such amazing drummers. It's interesting, at that time, instead of learning from them, I just dropped the whole thing because I felt like such a beginner again. I thought, you know what, these guys are way too good for me, so I'll just give up the drum for now. But then that came back later.
Got it.
Yeah, it was great because in that setting also there was an opportunity to learn more about not only the instruments, but also about the chants themselves and the pronunciation of the chants. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Now let me ask you this: so where does your sister come into play in all this? What happens to her? What does she do?
Well, it's interesting. My sister was actually the one who introduced me to the ashram. She had visited the same ashram I lived at in India when she went to visit a friend that was living there. Went back when in the early 90s when I was living in New York, kind of doing my crazy thing. And she had come back. She had actually a powerful spiritual awakening also, and she came back, and I hadn't seen her. She had gone back when my parents were actually wrapping up their India thing to leave, and so she wanted to go back one more time to hang out and check it out. So she comes back, and she's like all lit up, and like, wow, what happened to you? And she's like, you got to check this out. Like, this is great. And I could feel. She gave me some books about it, and then she had chanting tapes, and I thought, wow. And I mean, she was totally into it. That's all she wanted to do, and I thought, wow, this is great. I didn't, and then she was like, come with me to the ashram in upstate New York, and I was like, oh, I don't even go to bed until 6 in the morning in New York, because we work late in the bars, and I'm like, my lifestyle, I was just afraid to go to such a place, because I felt so toxic, and I didn't think I would survive a second in an environment like that. And I wasn't really drawn to, like, at that point, I wasn't really drawn to the
spiritual community?
Sorry, again?
Spiritual community?
Yeah, really wasn't into it. I just wanted, but at the same time, I could feel something with her had shifted, and I was like, well, I definitely like that, but I just wasn't drawn to, yeah, exactly, spiritual community. I was not drawn to at all. But I was also in my own world at that time in my life, so so interestingly, slowly, I connected. I mean, it's interesting because I think my sister played a huge part in connecting me to that. And then, interestingly, later she moved away from that connection herself to a more a Judaic approach to spirituality, which was fine because the whole point is whatever, however you connect, as long as you connect. And so we always kind of feel like her role in that whole process was to help me get connected. So maybe you could look at it like
Nice. Now, what does she do now?
But we've always been very close.
What does she do now?
She lives in California. She does part-time work. She's married, has a daughter, full-time mom.
So
we're very close. Our whole family, actually. It's great because we were very spread out for many years, having gone to boarding school and all that, and now we actually live close with both my parents next to each other.
Oh, nice. So does she still do Kirtan as well, or she just does that sometimes, and she's just full-time mom?
Not actively, but she does. She loves to come to our Kirtans when we do Kirtan events that are nearby, and she's always felt that strong connection, even though she's not directly associated with that tradition anymore. I think Kirtan that way, even if it just always has that. If so many people I know, even though they're like, oh, I don't chant so much anymore, but whenever they do, it's like it seems like the switch can never be switched off.
Oh, exactly right. Now, so you're in New York now, and you're starting to sing. You're not going to sing a lot more. So what's happening now? Are you forming a group, or are you going to school, or what's going on at this point?
Well, actually, no. I kind of, at that point in my life, I kept thinking I was going to go back to school, and I was like, I just never felt myself to be school, as they call it, classical school material. But what did happen was suddenly my whole musical inspiration was switched back on when it kind of dulled out a little bit, just from, excessive lifestyle. I was re-inspired. And one thing that really inspired me was this idea that I'd had with a friend of mine in India one day in his little restaurant, who was another big reggae fan, of bringing together reggae and an Indian form of music, because I always used to hear reggae in the Indian beats that I would hear, whether it was on the street. And a lot of people I know that are like myself that are big into reggae, we hear reggae in everything. I don't know what kind of music. We're like, hey, can you hear the reggae in there? And other people be like, what are you talking about? We're like, but anyone who listens to reggae, they just know, and it's reggae. But I had this idea way back before then, about this bringing Indian music and reggae together, but I didn't really have a strong connection with Indian music, even though I knew what I liked to hear. So I didn't know at that time, but then when I started getting into the kirtan and chanting, immediately I realized this is the perfect fit. Both the musical backgrounds and spiritual, they both have spiritual foundations. They come from spiritual backgrounds. They're very repetitive in nature, which for many people drives people crazy, and that's why they don't like reggae, or chanting for that matter. So I started actually thinking at that point, like, hey, that idea I had about reggae kirtan, or reggae Indian music, I thought, well, kirtan's a good fit. And it started kind of brewing a little bit, and then it wasn't until about several years later from then when I actually started composing my own melodies for kirtan and chants, that the reggae thing idea of bringing the two together became completely clear, and I knew it was going to work. It wasn't just an idea.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you hear that in your album that we're going to be playing tonight, and I really like some of that too as well. So that you did a really nice job of that. So yeah, so go ahead.
It's amazing because they're very seamless. They're very seamless. I mean, if you take that album, I mean, we'll be listening to it, but if you can take that album, you could take out all the kirtan stuff, and you have a full kirtan album. Fans reggae. You can take out all the kirtan, and you have a solid rhythm section for some reggae, because it's kind of all in there, and they really work quite well seamlessly.
Yeah, and I don't know that I don't know that I came across anything like it until I met you. Well, I guess last year, and I don't know that I had come across any kirtan that was reggae formatted, and I thought, whoa, this is interesting. So, anyhow,
yeah, I mean,
I'm really liking it.
You know, there are many kirtan artists who have done, you know, a reggae song here and there in their, you know, they throw one in the mix, but my whole thing was like, this is going to be primarily a kirtan album, done in reggae style, but not just, it was going to be done like reggae in the way that I've always been into reggae, which is a very rootsy style, similar to how reggae was done in the late 70s, very early 80s.
Got it.
Kind of vibe, yeah.
So, okay, so I guess you quit being a bartender, and then what did you go full-time being a reggae musician, or a kirtan musician, or what happens after that?
Well, it's interesting, before I went to live in the ashram in India,
oh, that's right, we went back to India. Okay.
Right, I had gone back to India, but before I left there, I had a really great bartending gig, and I just kind of felt like it didn't really, even though the money was really great, once I paid off a bunch of debt, I decided, you know, this work has really served me well for getting me to where I wanted to be now, but I felt that it was time to move away. At that time, also, smoking was still allowed in bars in New York.
Oh, really? Wow.
Difficult environment for working. I mean, those days, of course, long over. But also the contributing to the alcohol. I mean, it paid the bills, but it wasn't inspiring. And I thought, well, I'm not in a position to just quit and just do. I don't know. I didn't have a backup plan. So when I actually had gone to the ashram for 2 years, I was a staff member. You know, living a very simple existence, sleeping, eating, meditating. That was easy. Then I moved back to New York with these big ideas of all these things I was going to do with music, but then quite quickly had very little money. And so I actually worked in the restaurant business again, but then I went back to waiting tables, which I felt, you know, I can still make a living, and it's a more flexible situation where I can go in, work, I get out of there, I don't take it home with me.
Exactly.
Then I can focus on doing other things. But it actually wasn't until about 7 years after that was when the whole kirtan idea came very clear as a very focused music direction.
Now, hang on a second, you're waitering tables where? Are we talking about back in New York, or no, you're now in India?
Yeah, I was back in New York, and I stuck it out there for 3 years. And then I was getting to my mid-30s, and I was really finding New York to be just too much work to live there. It was fun, but I would have days where, you know, sitting at home, and I'm like, this is the city where there's something happening that anything I could choose, I could go and do, and I just wasn't stimulated anymore. And so I think it's time for me to move. So then I moved to California, and even when I moved out here, I didn't have a lot of money saved, and, you know, I took a break for 6 months and thought, all right, well, I need to get a job. I started working at a restaurant, actually a high-end Greek restaurant in Silicon Valley, which worked really well for me, and it was great people to work for. And it was actually when there was a fire at that restaurant, and they were closed for 7 weeks I went to New York. And a friend of mine had insisted. I was just starting to do my own kirtan thing, and a friend of mine insisted that I come and do a kirtan at his apartment. I wasn't even.
Oh, nice.
I thought, all right, well, he's like, don't even worry about it. I already set it up, and just come and do it.
No,
and it was great, and I. Sorry, go on.
No, hang on a second. So I'm trying to be clear where we're at now. So you're in New York, and then you go to the ashram in India for several years, and then you come back to New York for another 3 years. Later, and then you move to California. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, I kind of had all these ideas that I'd move back to New York and do all these amazing things, but then I ran out of money, and so all my inspiration from all those years at the ashram, even though, I mean, I still didn't lose anything, I mean, but I just suddenly got back to this New York grind, and so that tapped a lot of my inspiration. So then when I moved to California, it was a little more of a laid-back living style, and it was nice to connect with the family. But I used to go back to New York 2 times a year because I have a lot of friends there.
Oh, great.
But it was actually in New York when there was this break in my job because of this fire, and we had to renovate the place. That I actually I was in the process of recording this CD as a side project, and through these people I'd met at my friend's place doing this kirtan. Jayu Tal, who was actually from the Bay Area, even though I'd never been to any of his kirtans, I knew who he was doing a kirtan and a workshop in New York when I was there. And I decided to go to the kirtan, which was great, and then I went and did his 2-day workshop. And it was in his 2-day workshop that all of a sudden I just was like, this is exactly what I want to do.
Oh, very nice.
And I'm thinking, that's so funny. Like, I've been sitting in California all this time. Jayutal lives an hour away from me. I never saw him out here. I had to go back to New York. It's funny how many things I discovered in New York.
Right?
It's always been my discovery zone. And so, and all of a sudden I thought, he's doing what I've always wanted to do, and I just didn't know it. It amazed me how it took so long to bring together music and my whole spiritual practice, which were the 2 most important things to me, into one pod, and,
So let me help you out, David.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's that fire alarm going Ari. Exactly.
The fire is lit. That's it. Yeah, no kidding. Nice. So now you did a kirtan in that guy's house apartment as well?
Yeah, and that's where I actually met I made friends there that were very connected with the kirtan scene in New York, and they were the ones who were like, oh, you got to come to the Jai show, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I went to the Jai show, and they're like, oh, well, he's doing a workshop for 2 days this weekend. And I thought, well, I'm here, let's do it. And then interestingly also, while the restaurant was closed, I had this sudden break where I kept going back to New York. I mean, I also started dating a girl in New York, which was funny because I lived in California, but it was just all amazing. There was all this amazing stuff going on, and she was connected with the kirtan scene there, and I was suddenly like, wow, there's all these amazing kirtan people here, and I never knew them when I lived in New York, and so there was all this back and forth bi-coastal thing going on of discovery.
Yeah, right.
And then when I came back, to the Bay Area, went back to work at the place we opened, and I had started I became friends with Jai, and I would go to his kirtans and met a lot of my friend Pradnya Vieta, who sings on the CD, who lives near me, and we were both starting our own kirtan thing. She had already just started her band, and I was starting mine, and we were like, hey, we live near each other. We should create like a little support network for each other, since there's the only other kirtan going on in the Bay Area at the time was Jai. And nobody else was doing kirtan. We're like, this is a perfect opportunity to cultivate some kirtan, some more stuff. Because he wasn't doing kirtans every week. I mean, he would do, every 1 or 2 a month. And so it was a great, interesting. We were actually advised. I was advised by someone like, oh, if you're going to do kirtan in the Bay Area, go somewhere else because there's Kirtan in the Bay Area is just not happening. And I thought, oh, well, that's too bad. And I thought, well, that's actually, we started looking at it as an opportunity to cultivate something.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
And, well, we're like, we live here, we're not going anywhere. I was like, I'm not moving again. Let's just deal, like, let's just do it. We live here, let's create it, let's get it going. And that was in 2009, and, here we are 7 years later, and it's, the Bay Area has become actually one of the most, thriving Kirtan scenes, as far as I know.
Yeah, no kidding, right? And there's lots of Kirtans up there right now, right? All over the place.
Oh yeah, I mean, a friend of ours started a weekly list called Bhavani's List that promotes everything going on in the Bay Area Kirtan every week. And I mean, if you look at that list, some nights there'll be 4 or 5 different things to choose from. Not just Kirtan, but Sufi devotional, gospel. I mean, anything devotional. But Kirtan also is probably a huge, more than half of that. And so yeah, it's turned into a really thriving community with a great networking setup, and people actually make the drive to go for it, and it's great.
Exactly. So now, so you get a group going, and they're in the Bay Area. I'm assuming that's what you're saying. And so what's happening now? And when do you cut your first album, or how many albums do you have out?
I have 2 albums out. The first album I made, I was already in the process of making, like I said, is this side project. That was an acoustic style Kirtan album done in a more traditional style, also recordings of, the idea of that album, it was called Nama Sankirtan Volume 1. Nama Sankirtan is to sing or repeat the name. That's sort of that's the Sanskrit word, from what I know, that the word Kirtan came from. Kirtan literally means to repeat, and Sankirtan is, Nama Sankirtan means to sing or to repeat the name, the holy name.
Right.
So Nama Sankirtan Volume 1 was that CD, and that, I also wanted to captivate, my idea with that CD was to create a live kind of feel studio recording, though, that had longer chants that people could chant along with and actually get into a very chant experience versus shorter ones that are sort of song/chant that are maybe a little longer than a song you would listen to on an album, but not super long. So that album consisted of 4 chants, starting with an invocation. The shortest one was probably 11 minutes, and the longest was 14 minutes.
Got it.
And those just featured, early melodies that I had. One of which, Sri Krishna Govinda, was a melody I had for a chant before I even knew really what chanting was. But I always knew this is going to be a chant. And then the words showed up one day and plopped right in, and that little alarm went off again. Yeah.
So, and then mostly that album was just, to inspire people? Is that your intentions behind it, or what was it?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, that was, it was sort of the beginnings of the Ananda Rasa, our sort of sound. I worked together with my harmonium player, Greg Stiller, who lives in LA now, who was there from the beginning, and another singer, response singer, Damiana, who are longtime friends of mine. And we were also, we were cultivating what is the Ananda Rasa sound, like what is the way that we like to chant, and also taking it from our ashram experience to how can this work with the public, because chanting in the ashram, in many different ashrams, how it's done there for people that are very oriented with spiritual practice versus people that might not be as much. I think things have to be tweaked a little bit. If it's too deep and too slow, and if people aren't used to that kind of a connection, they're going to get restless. But at the same time, if it's too fast and too kind of crazy, too quick, then there's not enough depth So we would play around with ways to find the balance, like what works with people with what we're doing, and how can we serve them with a chance so that they get it in their world, you know? Because we're flexible. Like if when it's our own practice, it was easy for us to connect in whatever way we need to connect. That's what we do.
So I just now
cultivating that and developing the sound, you know.
I just now put your album up so people can look at your second album that we're going to be playing tonight. But so go ahead.
Yeah, so the Mulani, the Dub Kirtan album. After finishing that first CD, all of a sudden I was like, you know, I had started working on this reggae reggae idea, and it started coming together really quick. All of a sudden, I played it for some people, the demos I had made, and the response to it was very good. And then I actually started thinking, well, you know, I'm going to need someone who's very qualified to actually mix the album once I record it, because I don't really have that experience. And I had so what I did was I sent the demo to a guy, Victor Axelrod, who I knew from New York, who's a very experienced producer and sound engineer, and very reggae-oriented in his music, as well as other world music, because I really liked his mixing style. And I sent him the demos and said, hey, this is a project I'm working on. I want to hire you to mix it, possibly. What do you think? And he wrote back and said, I think it's great. I just can't take any more work right now because I'm swamped. But he said, I've fielded it to Michael Goldwasser, who he had worked with for many years. They were the sort of reggae co-producers for many projects. And I knew who Michael Goldwasser was. I didn't know him. And he said, I played it for him, and he's expressed a lot of interest in the project.
Right.
So check in with him and see. So I got in touch with Michael Goldwasser. So basically, Michael Goldwasser and Victor Axelrod, they've been playing reggae for years. They started their own reggae label, Easy Star Records, back in the early 90s when they weren't happy with Jamaican reggae at the time. It was going through a transition. So they said, let's start playing reggae the way we like it. Let's start our own record label. They worked with a lot of reggae Jamaican, there's a big Jamaican population in New York and a lot of reggae musicians. So they also worked with famous people, famous reggae artists. Came out with a great album, Easy Star Volume 1, which was roots reggae, fresh, amazing. And anyway, so then they got into this thing of creating these crossover albums where they took Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and turned it into a reggae album.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was called the Dub Side of the Moon, and at first people thought it was some sort of a gimmick thing, but it was a huge success, and that's what made their name. And Michael Goldwasser, I mean, that was their big break. That album still to this day is a favorite. And it wasn't some sort of a cheesy spin-off. It was done in real reggae style production, and they actually got permission from Pink Floyd, and I mean, it was all done, well done. And so the cool thing was in reference to my thing, Michael Goldwasser had a lot of experience doing this crossover thing, because then they did it with a Radiohead album, and he'd done it with a Beatles album, and even a Michael Jackson album, Thriller and Sgt. Pepper's, making these into reggae records. And by then, after Dub Side of the Moon, when that blew up, then they had sort of quote-unquote buying power, where they were able to work with like top reggae musicians from the top echelon that all wanted to sing on the project, because it was good exposure for them, and they kind of liked the idea of like, hey, everyone was sort of influenced by the Beatles in some way, no matter what music they play, and hey, let's do a reggae version of Lovely Read It. I mean, so we got in touch, and he said, hey, listen, I'll tell you what, I've never heard of Kirtan, but this is great, and this is great. And that was inspiring, because I knew he knew what he knew, and I knew what I know, and I always thought it would work, but for someone who had never heard of Kirtan, he loved the call and response thing. He loved the fact that the melodies of the music, the chants, were in Indian-based scales, which was not typical of reggae, but he's like, this is reggae, it works, but it's also got the Indian element, and then I said, oh, well, you know, these are just the demos, or there's going to be Indian instruments in there, and so we decided, let's do it. And it was also, the cool thing was there was actually a very small time window with his time and when he was available, and I underestimated the amount of time I actually needed to finish the record, and miraculously pulled the whole thing off in 3 months.
Wow.
I mean, I had the demos, but I basically built it all up again from the ground up because I wanted to use real pianos and, you know, vintage equipment that I could find to get that classic sound, which was, you know, on his advice, and I totally agree. And we wanted to use all real instruments, so yeah, I could have killed for another 3 months easy, but I didn't have it, and it's amazing how much can get done under pressure, and I can see how things can get drawn out too, you know, and it just make a decision and stick with it and be like, we're going to go with it, and that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But it worked out, you know, and he was great to work with. Michael's an amazing, I mean, he knew this was the biggest thing I'd ever worked on, and he totally could, you know, he was patient. He let me have my meltdowns. You know, whatever we banged heads over about how things should sound, we were able to work everything out, and it was just the way that whole thing came together was I knew from the beginning it was going to be.
So,
Including and raising the funding, and yeah.
So now let me ask you this. So and now you do this album after he works with all these people, and he's got all this experience under his belt, and so this calls for this an album being done really well in the way that you want. But before and even up to now, did you have any more amazing spiritual experiences or paranormal experiences? And did you eventually encounter a teacher that you could study under as a spiritual teacher or something like that at this point?
Well, interestingly, the spiritual awakening that I had in New York back in '96 was through the spiritual path known as Siddha Yoga, and the spiritual teacher who is the head of that, the current living master of that tradition, is a woman by the name of Guru Mai, who was a direct disciple of Swami Muktananda, who brought that path to America and the world in the 1970s.
Right.
And his teacher was Bhagwan Nityananda, who was what was known as an Abhidut, who was, you know, sort of the enlightened madman, unconventional guy who walked around in a loincloth, performing basically miracles danced around Nityananda. And Muktananda found him when he was 40 after he had met him when he was very young. And even though Swami Muktananda had learned so many things and knew so many things, Nityananda initiated him in Shaktipat Diksha, which is this transmission of grace. And that's what created Swami Muktananda's spiritual unfoldment on the deeper metaphysical and mystical and spiritual level, where he actually, over a period of 9 years of intense sadhana, realized his self-realization happened, and he realized that everything he had learned up until the point that he met his guru was preparation for him for that moment of direct realization of what he had learned. And so then Muktananda, before he passed away in the early 80s, passed on the lineage to Guru Mai. And interestingly, from that path, even though this Shaktipat Diksha spiritual awakening is really a connection to experiencing what's called the Guru consciousness, which is I call it the cosmic plug. It's It's what connected me to all of the teachers and everything that they teach and everything that they embody from every single tradition.
Now, all these teachers that you're talking about, they all fall under the lineage of Krishna. Is that correct?
No, actually not. They Siddha Yoga tradition actually is its philosophical foundation is in philosophy known as Kashmir Shaivism, which is a non-dual path. And even though it's associated with the word Shaivism as Shiva, it's Shiva as the supreme consciousness itself, even beyond Shiva as the personality.
Right.
And as a result of that, through this tradition, through this guru initiation tradition into the guru consciousness, it is the gateway to realize all of the deities and all of the supreme beings in their manifestations coming from that consciousness as a direct experience within. So the whole idea is the direct experience of consciousness through Diksha. And for me, what my realization was, and this is how Kirtan suddenly blew up for me, was like, oh, there's an amazing, each deity that I'm singing to, whether it's, and in the yoga tradition, they sing to Krishna, they sing to Shiva, they sing to Vishnu, they sing to Ganesha, all of these deities and Hanuman are all represented. And what my realization was that through this cosmic connection that I've been connected to, I'm able to realize directly what all of these beings represent and what they symbolize within myself, and I'm able to see that in the form that they represent outside myself simultaneously. So it's a direct experience versus it's not an outward worship, and it's not only an inward worship. It's like this. It's a simultaneous inward-outer experience of what that deity represents. And it's amazing how, even though it's through our tradition, the spiritual tradition, they all come from that same. The Guru consciousness is awakened that. The Guru Shakti has awakened that so that we can experience that. But it's also beautiful how each deity has its own rasa or own flavor. That Krishna, I would feel when I would sing to Krishna, I feel Krishna strongly in my heart. And to me, when I sing Shiva Kirtan, it's very deep and it's very introspective. So there's all these beautiful kind of colors and attributes that are that I would directly experience, and then when I would study more about the deity, I'd be like, oh, now I can understand why in this form you'll be holding this particular thing, and what does that represent? So that's kind of what that's about.
Exactly. Okay.
So the powerful thing to go beyond that, though, is sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying to wrap that whole thing up. The beautiful thing about that path for me was that that path opened me up to all paths.
Right.
And I feel a kinship with all spiritual paths. I feel kinships with friends of mine that are Krishna devotees, whether they're devotees of the baby, of the mother, of their Amma devotees. I feel that because of that plug, and even when I went to Tiruvannamalai and I was walking on Arunachala Mountain, I had an experience where Ramana Maharshi spoke to me within myself, saying there's only one Guru and that's it, and that's that what I call the cosmic plug. Like once that switch goes on, that for me was a connection to everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like that connection wasn't there. It's just that I hadn't flipped the switch, and maybe because I couldn't or I didn't know how. But once that switch was flipped, all of a sudden that connection to all. When I go to the Krishna temple, I feel Krishna's energy, and as in the form of within myself. And so it's not like I go there and I think this isn't my path. I shouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You just.
When I go there, I feel this is my path.
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm here to sing the name. Just the same when I go to the yoga ashram, or when I go to the ashram with Amma, I love the bhajans and they move me, and I feel that energy, that shakti permeating the place and the devotees. And I also feel that same conscious energy when when I walk out my backyard and look at these beautiful trees. Even in Mumbai traffic sometimes. I mean, it's all there.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing about Kashmir Shaivism. The Kashmir Shaivism philosophy is that everything exists. Everything that exists is real and is a manifestation of chitti, or is a form. It is a form that's a manifestation of consciousness, and that nothing exists. Nothing can exist unless it is a part of consciousness. And so, therefore, everything that exists is consciousness. Yeah.
So now,
so that's the whole philosophical sideshow.
No, I hear you. And so you go to this Michael guy, and then you put this album together. And what was that process like for you? And we got about 18 minutes left, so I want to leave a few minutes to play at least 2 or 3 songs. But what was that process for you?
Well, it was an intense process because I really wanted to. That was what I considered my life inspiration of work at that point. I mean, it was the most thing. I mean, it was the most lit up I'd ever been about anything in my life, and so I felt very emotionally connected to it. I really wanted to get it the way I wanted it to sound. So there were ups and downs. It was intense because it was a labor of love, but I never had worked so hard on something because of time and completely immersed. I was still working a job at the restaurant also, so it was literally like work, come home, get on the computer, edit, tracking, and then and there were things that worked well and other things that didn't and had to be redone, and there was money that was spent that was lost, and it was all part of this amazing process. And I think it was interesting for Michael too, because he was saying even how he would listen to the chants, and there was he was having these. I think the funniest thing was when he told me, he goes, "Hey, I had a funny experience. I was listening to that rough mix of one of your chants," and he's like, all of a sudden I realized I totally missed my exit. You were listening to it in the car. He's like, I totally missed my exit and I have no idea where I was. And I was like, oh, well, that's a good sign. He was really inspired. Because the cool thing was that was inspiring working with him also was that, he had told me that it was the most interesting thing he had mixed third party that he had worked on in a long time. So that was inspiring for me because, I didn't even know the guy. When somebody believes in what you're doing like that, who's at that level. Well, it was also very motivating. Yeah, it was a motivating. It kept me moving along, especially through challenges but at the same time, there's so much grace behind it, just pushing the whole thing.
So let's go ahead and play a song. I don't know where you want to start, but we'll start with whatever you want to start with, and then go from there. How's that?
Well, actually, my favorite song on the whole album has always been Parvati Vallabha, track 7.
Okay.
Because that was actually the first. That was actually the first of the. That was the first chant that I put together as a reggae style chant, and. No,
I got this song listed as Radha Govinda. Is that the same one?
No, that's number 8. That's one with the guest track with the Maya Parade, which is also very nice.
Number 8, okay.
But I'm happy with, you can even choose if you have a favorite that you like. I like all.
No, okay, so, and then number 8 I got as Namah Shivaya. So, and then the one you're talking about is called what?
No, well, that's Parvati Vallabha, Namah Shivaya. That's actually track 7. On the
because there was some confusion.
The order might be a little bit.
Yeah, no, there was some confusion in when I was uploading these, and I wasn't understanding it, and so and I don't even know that I uploaded that particular song, but I'll upload.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we just You can just, why don't we just, just click on one and
okay, we're going to do number 6. Jaya Jaya Radhe Ramana Hari Bol. How's that?
actually, not that I don't like that chant, but that's my least favorite on the album.
Alright, well, you let me know.
The one after that, the Namah Shivaya one.
Oh, okay, and that one was
Namah Shivaya, yeah.
Okay. So let's just do that. Let's send out love blessings to the angels of light love to you, David, and all your family and friends, and to all those people that came together to put this album together. Of course, to me, my family, and all my friends, and then to all of our art, to all of our service that we put out there. We will be back. Namah Shivaya by David Estes from his album Mulani Dub Kirtan. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, actually, the track is actually called Parvati Vallabha, but there is a Namah Shivaya part in there.
Okay, so here we go.
Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om 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 Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha 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 Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om 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 Namah Shivaya, Parvati Vallabha 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 Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, 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 Namah Shivaya.
Awesome, and we're back. This is Aloha live out of Flagstaff, Arizona, on the Golden Age Music Show here with Dave Justice and his album, their album, Ananda Rasa's album, ARK Mulani Dub Kirtan. Now, Dave, we only got a few minutes left. Is there anything that you want to play next that you want to go ahead and sign off with?
Yeah, we could, let's play one of the, tracks that has the horns on it there.
Okay.
Just to get a feel of the, let's do track 4, the Jagadambe Jai Ma Durga, which features Pranya Vieira, my Kirtan buddy and ally. This track is cool because it's a classic progression from reggae, but it's also done based on a raga style and with all the horns and cool dolaks and tablas thrown in there. as well as some shlokas at the end from Devi chanting. So let's play that one.
So I want to go ahead and thank you for joining us here tonight, David, and sharing your music with us. And I also want to thank all of you for being here. And with this song, let's go ahead and send out love. That's Cities, Angels, Light Love to the President of the United States and all his family, to all those running for office, to all the children, animals, and plants on the planet, especially the ones needing concern, and everyone else in need of concern. And again, have a God-Goddess week. Be the love that you are, always have been, and always will be. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Recording has stopped.